So why don't we get into how you became the chief editor of The Boys and what made you become a writer as a Cowboy fan?
Yeah, I really kind of fell in love with the Cowboys, I would say. My junior year of high school, the fall of 2006, that was T.O.'s first year in Dallas. And, at that age, you love players like T.O. and you're kind of captivated by them. And so, it just became my life, something I was really obsessed with. And I look back and I wonder what I would have been like on Twitter or something like that back then. I thank God that it wasn't around because I don't think it would have ended well. And just always kind of, it was something that my dad and I have shared. Something that's grown us closer together. And as a result, kind of been something that my whole family's been a part of because of what I do for a living. My wife is big into the Cowboys. My mom is big. Everyone is really supportive of me in my career. And so Sundays we have I wouldn't say a ritual, but a practice of it all. And so it's always kind of been in my family in that sense. And around 2015 after college, just trying to figure things out, I really, I wanted to do it. I didn't know what that meant. I wanted to blog. I wanted to write. I wanted to podcast. I didn't know, but I knew I wanted to talk about the Cowboys in some capacity. So I reached out to a blog I found at the time. It was called InsideTheStar.com. Said, hey, I want to write about the Cowboys, and kind of got on there, wrote a couple articles a week. There was a guy doing a podcast. I said, hey, if you ever need somebody, I'd love to be on, at any time. He's become a really good friend of mine, and we both kind of grown in our careers at the same time, which has been fun. And so just kind of was doing a little bit of blogging, podcasting, whatever. I was living in San Antonio, Texas at the time. And about a year into that, there was a local radio station, ESPN San Antonio, had a competition they called Rock the Mic, kind of open mic situation. And I was fortunate. I was really blessed that I won. And so that was 2016. That was Dak and Zeke's rookie year. And so they kind of needed a Cowboys guy, to talk about everything that was happening. And they knew I was a blogger and a podcaster. And so this massive season's unfolding for the Cowboys. It's really fortuitous for me. That season also, 2016, was the Super Bowl 51, which was in Houston. And so, to drive from San Antonio and they told me, like, look, we can't pay for you to go or anything, but we can try to comp your meals a little bit. But, if you can find a place to stay, we'd love to have some extra hands on deck at Radio Row. So, okay, found some, had some family in Houston, drove over there, 5 hours, no big deal, and just kind of got to experience different things. And little by little, did a little bit more. Kind of got to experience more things. Really grateful to those guys for everything they offered me at the time. And in 2017, emailed the founder of Blogging the Boys, said, hey, do you have a spot on your staff, whatever? So got on with them in 2017, was blogging here, doing like some Facebook Live stuff, just, again, trying to do anything and everything I could. And a year later, in the summer of 2018, a full-time role opened up to kind of oversee Blogging the Boys and kind of oversee our brand and everything that we wanted to do. And so I was really fortunate to get it, and I've been here ever since.
So why don't we get into your boys, the Cowboys, or what people call over here, if you're not a Cowboy fan, the Cowgirls.
Clever, super creative, never heard it before.
That's right. Dak Prescott, who I'm a big fan of. I've followed him since he came out of college, 4th-round draft pick, took over for Tony Romo, coming back from a major injury in the beginning of the season, was playing very, very well. MVP candidate, looked really, really good. The last couple of weeks have not looked good. People have been taking shots all over social media of Dak Prescott. What's going on if he's not 100% healthy? What are your thoughts to Dak Prescott, really the second half of the season? And do you think that this is going to affect where this team is going as they get closer to the playoffs?
I don't know how you could say it won't affect them, given he's the quarterback. He's the most important player on the team. And they've won 2 games in a row, mostly in spite of him and what he's been able to do. He almost threw the game away last Sunday in Washington. And so it's not hard to look at where his struggles began this season and point to, that being his return from the calf injury. And so that's been a pair of dots that people have jumped to connect, right? So it's clearly the calf. And, Vic Fangio very, very, very famously said, a month and a half ago, the Cowboys, they didn't figure out a blueprint. That was something everybody talked about at the time. Is there a blueprint to beat this team, whatever? And I don't think there's a blueprint, but looking at things, because we're now several games into this. This isn't 1 game or 2 games, and it's not just, Amari's out, Amari tested positive, or Tyron Smith's out. There's a huge sample size here, multiple factors, multiple variables. Mike McCarthy wasn't even there for 1 game, et cetera. And when you look at it, he's being blitzed less. And that's something Greg Olsen talked about on the broadcast this past week. So he's throwing into more traffic. But despite the fact that he's being blitzed less, he is still under more duress. So in that sense, not to believe me, I hate that people are making up for Dak right now. I would like to see some responsibility put on his shoulders. But The offensive line is folding a little bit. Again, they're being blitz less, and they're still allowing more pressures than when they were being blitzed. Receivers are dropping balls at a higher rate than they were in that stretch the Cowboys had to begin the season. So you've got that. You've got receivers dropping balls. You've got offensive line not necessarily working. The Cowboys are shuffling their offensive line, both out of necessity and because they can't make up their mind with who's going to be their left guard. And then you've got the fact that Dak's just making some poor decisions. And so I think he's had more time to think, and I don't know what y'all have heard about idle hands, but they don't say that idle hands are golden to work with. And so that's kind of where Dak is at. He's just got idle hands and he's thinking way too much, and he's forcing, he's pressing, and it's starting to cost the team a little bit. And so if they can obviously regain their offensive form from early on in the season, I think this is a really complete football team. But right now it's hard to wonder whether or not they can recapture that.
So Trevon Diggs has been a very interesting player this year. He has 9 interceptions, but in the second half of the season, he's allowed a lot of big plays, getting back to a lot of penalties. As a whole, the team defense it's been good, but it still hasn't been to that same level it was in the beginning of the season when they had that fast start. So are you concerned about Trevon Diggs with these big plays, or do you still think he's a lockdown corner that he's been all season long? And what impact do you think it'll have on the team defense?
I don't think anybody ever thought he was a lockdown corner. I think, the interception streak was really fun at the beginning, right? Like, this is crazy. How is he doing this? This is stupid. This doesn't make any sense. And then it became obvious that, okay, he's either picking these balls off or he's getting beat, right? Like, he's, the common terms, discussion was that he's hit or miss, he's swing or miss, whatever. He's big play one way or the other. And that was kind of who he was. I mean, a lot of people saw the game in New England. He had the pick 6 off Mac Jones that willed them back into that game. And then, like, 2 plays later, Mac Jones hits Kendrick Bourne for a 75-yard touchdown. And that's kind of been who the defense was for a long time. Was they were, we're talking 3 and out or turnover, or just like big play to kind of, allow a score. And interestingly, this last game against Washington was kind of the best game that Trevon has had as far as like being a pure corner. Traveled with Terry McLaurin, shut Terry McLaurin down. Granted, Terry did get hurt in the game, which sucked, but and did have the huge play that Cam Sims had on him. But I mean, look, it was a stupid, amazing catch. I mean, that happens to the best of guys. So I really am not worried about Trevon. The defense looks amazing right now. They're causing all these turnovers. They've gotten scores in back-to-back games, but there is the context that's necessary that, they played Taysom Hill and then Taylor Heineke with a little bit of Kyle Allen sprinkled in. And so I think overall, Cowboys fans have said for, like, I don't know, you mentioned Tony Romo. Since Tony Romo was around, man, if they could just have an average defense, that, this group could do something special. And that, that was under the impression that they would have the elite offense that they've generally had in their successful seasons, which they don't have, at least as of late. So I think they're better than an average defense. I don't know where I would put them. I mean, are they maybe they're a top 10 defense. Maybe they're like 9 or 10. I wouldn't say they're a top 5 defense. They're certainly capable of playing like that. But they have some bad moments as well. They've had a great 2 weeks, but again, the context of who they played is necessary. I think they're what Cowboys fans have asked for in that sense. But now, at least at this particular point, they're being tasked with carrying things, which they've been able to do these last 2 weeks. But I don't know that that's sustainable. If you draw the Rams in the wild card round, if you have to go to Lambeau Field, you even have to go to Arizona. If you play an elite quarterback, I don't know if that's going to happen for them.
It's funny, Mr. RJ, that you brought up carrying things. Speaking of carrying things, your running back, Ezekiel Elliott, is carrying a pretty big purse on his shoulders for the next foreseeable future. And yet the best running back on your team, Tony Pollard, does not play nearly as much as he should. Is there a problem in Dallas? It's a good problem to have. Obviously, you have 2 horsebacks back there that every team would love to have, that problem. Cleveland's had it, and such and so on and so forth. The Ravens have it, etc., etc. Do you see a time where Tony Pollard will actually become the starter and Zeke's time in Dallas is up, or they're just going to continue to do this 2-horseback system?
So I will say that, I'm pretty certain I speak for all rational Cowboys fans here, which maybe isn't that many people, but
no, I know.
Nobody is proud of the Zeke contract. Like, we're all happy for Zeke, and I'm happy for any player that gets paid. Go get paid,
right.
Get yours. You deserve it. And very happy for Zeke that he leveraged the leverage that he had, because he plays an incredibly fragile position, which is, supportive of the argument that you shouldn't pay that position because of we don't have to relitigate that argument. So, I mean, nobody's going to sit here and say this is ideal. This is awesome that Zeke's cap number is what it is. It was a mistake. The Cowboys chose to pay Zeke and Jalen Smith instead of Byron Jones. I mean, that was dumb. We all agree with that. It just kind of is what it is at this point, and we've kind of made our peace with it. I'm with you. I would love to see Tony Pollard play more. And we kind of thought last week would be that game until the news of the foot injury came out. But Tony Pollard is awesome. And I think a lot of people originally thought that Tony was like this scat back, this just kind of change of pace, quick, shifty dude. But he's capable of carrying a full load. And so again, none of this is ideal. But this is who the Cowboys are. Zeke is a really important person to the Cowboys. And that, we see that across the NFL. We see that across sports, right? Like there's, call it favoritism or nepotism or however you want to term it. Zeke is close pals with Dak Prescott, right? He is in many ways, I don't know if you guys know this, but everybody knows about the Star where the Cowboys train and operate out of. Everybody saw the drone shot on Hard Knocks. That facility opened in 2016 with Zeke and Dak as rookies. And at the time, Dak was not, the face of the Cowboys like he is now. It was Zeke. Zeke was the future. Zeke was the passing of the baton from the Tony Romo era to whatever was going to come beyond. The future just accelerated and got there that particular season with Dak. And so he is this era of the Cowboys. If this generation was a poster, I mean, Zeke would be front and center. And so it's difficult to see them moving on from him. I mean, because of the emotional connection. From a rational perspective, an objective one, should they do it? Absolutely. I mean, there's no question about that. Nobody's going to deny that. But he does hold a very special place within the nucleus of the overall construction of this team. It's just, it's an awkward situation, and I think a better front office would be better at moving on from him.
These overpaid players. We talk about Lawrence getting overpaid, Ezekiel Elliott. I think Dak Prescott deserves every penny that he got in the offseason, the $40 million. He's a quarterback. When you look at the quarterbacks in this league and what they're getting paid, Dak, before he got hurt at all, was doing and really putting up unbelievable numbers. You can't take that away from him. But the other players, Jalen Smith, who they just dropped, all these other guys that they've overpaid, Amari Cooper, giving him the $100 million contract that they have, and CeeDee Lamb, I believe, is the best wide receiver on that team. And then obviously Gallup, who they're probably not going to be able to re-sign. They're going to have to trade him in the offseason because they're not going to be able to re-sign him because of their salary problems that they have right now going into the offseason. When you look at this team and the money that they've put into some of these players and these stars, do you think that this has affected this team moving forward in the future, or do you think that this has helped show the league that the contracts in the CBA should be up a little bit more?
Well, I would first push back and say that Amari Cooper is definitely the best receiver on the team. I think when the season was starting, certainly at training camp, it looked like, okay, CeeDee is going to have the takeover year. The moment CeeDee was drafted, it was inevitable that he was at some point going to assert himself as the alpha of even the two fellow receivers that he plays with. That has not happened this year. In fact, CeeDee's had a lot of drops this year. CeeDee's had some bad moments. Amari has been the dude. Amari has been the most clutch, most consistent. He has the highest passer rating when targeted compared to Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb. Granted, Gallup missed a lot of time. And so, a lot of people, to your point, last offseason, we're having the conversation. Look, when 2022 comes, it's only $6 million against the cap to cut Amari. Mm-hmm. Should we cut Amari? Mm-hmm. Obviously, CeeDee's our guy, and we'll pay Gallup, and then we've got, CeeDee and Gallup for the future. Or do we let Gallup walk? Do we pick up a compensatory pick in 2023? There's a lot of ways you can play it out. And it's interesting to wonder if Gallup is someone they're able to re-sign, given that he missed so much time this year. But, that's a problem for March and April. So I think the Amari contract worked out. They kind of had to pay Amari when it came up last year because they traded a first-round pick for him. They kind of, made their bet at that point in time. He made them look like geniuses. I mean, it's one of the best trades they've ever made. But I think for the most part, their contracts have really worked out. The Jalen Smith one, at the time was not as bad as it looks. He was coming off of a great season in 2018. He had kind of said and done all the right things. It was a great story. I mean, he remains a great story. But it just obviously didn't work out. I think that their mistakes with Jalen came after they paid him. I think they were really proactive with a lot of deals, and they've never really lost a player that they wanted to keep. They weren't like in love with Byron Jones when they let him walk. The only thing they really botched, the two things were they paid a running back, which was dumb. And they took forever to pay their quarterback, but they did get it done. I mean, and at the end of the day, all it costed them was their own money. And it could have been done in a more efficient way. But for the most part, I'd say that they've handled that well, and they've proven that you can kind of play the long game as long as you're willing to go the distance, which they did. But you've got to blink at some point, and they did. They lost that battle to Dak Prescott.